Alright guys, welcome to another tutorial. Today we're looking at multiple flash pops. Basically still going to be a flash and ambient layer, but we're going to use two flashes at the same time. And I'm going to take you on site, and I apologize for my GoPro. I had it sitting too low, but I just wanted to give you an idea of the scene and how it looked, what I did to get this result. All right, so I just arrived on location to this house. We got a beautiful staircase right here, big, nice, tall ceilings. Now, I am doing lights off, except for the stairwell here and this chandelier. Couple reasons for that. There's not a whole lot of natural light coming in up here, so I just want to keep it lit without having to run around and do too many multiple pops here. But this is the camera setup today. We're on the EM1 Mark II from Olympus, and I'm using the Leica 7.5 millimeter. I'm going to be between 2.8 and f4 for my aperture. And when you notice the screen here, let's see if I can zoom in close enough. Notice my histogram, the majority of it is just right of center. That's where you want to be. Here we go, let's take the first image. Okay, and there's our ambient layer. Looks good. And now for the flash layer. So what I like to do first is fire one shot with the camera flash only, just to see what kind of lighting we have going on. Make sure the trigger's on. And it's at full power. We'll just see what that does. Okay, it lit it up pretty nice. So now I'm going to run into the far room. I'm going to put this, it's at AD 200, so I'm going to put this at a quarter power and go over here. So we're going to blend this layer with this layer. So I'm going to edit these two images for you. And let's go up to, I always like to change the profile to standard. I'm going to leave it on as shot because I shoot in auto white balance. If you want to test out auto white balance, see how it looks a little too warm for my taste. We're going to go back to as shot. Moving on. I think the histogram is perfect. We could maybe brighten this up just a little bit to help blend it. Maybe increase the shadows just a little bit. And maybe drop the highlights just a touch. You don't really have to play with that too much. Just get the overall image very nice and exposed however you want it. And we're going to come down here. I don't touch the sharpening, none of this stuff. And we'll correct for verticals after. So I like to just copy all my settings here. Come over to this one, and we're just going to paste those same settings into this one. I like the way that turned out. So now I'm just going to have this one clicked, and I'm going to get my ambient layer, command click that, right click, edit in, open as layers in Photoshop. Alright, so once you have your two layers into Photoshop, we got our flash underneath, we got our ambient layer on top. Here is the simplest way to do this, folks, and this is just to bring that opacity, and it just does not work on every single image, but it does work for this one. We're going to bring the opacity down to 50%. I'm going to change my ambient layer to luminosity, and we're done. If you wanted to bring those windows back in a little bit more, trying to paint them back in with a flash image, see how they're a little bit darker? What you're going to do is just make sure your ambient layer is clicked. Click the mask layer here. Just leave it white. We're going to come over here to our brush. Make sure the black is on the top here. And then get your brush and just paint those back in. And that's going to reveal the flash layer underneath. So that's what that looks like with just the flash. And that's what the ambient blended back in. The only critique you would have is like right here, you have a shadow underneath this overhang here, but it's not even noticeable. I just think it looks really good. So let's flatten this image. Now here is a trick, and I have this method in some other tutorials. This is how I correct for white balance, color casts, all that kind of stuff. So duplicate the layer, take that little lock and shut that off. Come on up here to filter and then blur, and then average. So if you have perfect white balance, this should be about, I think it's 50% gray that it needs to be. To test that, or to change it to 50% gray, we're going to come down here and choose a curves adjustment layer, and then pick the middle eyedropper, and then just click anywhere in the image. Just click once. See, now it did change the color. I wonder if you could see that. So now we're just going to shut this layer off because we don't need it. And now we're just going to toggle this off and then on again. It does change it. It almost pushes it too much for my taste. So what I like to do is maybe take the opacity down 75 to 50%, depending on how drastic it was. But I think right there is good. So then we're just going to, actually we could just junk this layer here, flatten the image, Command S to save it, and let's get back into Lightroom. Okay, here it is. I'm going to do my interior final bump here. And what I also like to do is maybe make the blacks, bring the blacks down. You can add some vibrance maybe. And there you go. A big space. I utilize those lights up here to keep this lit. And we just ran an 8200 with another flash on top of the camera and did our flash pop, and that is a finished image. Okay, so I'm going to take you back on site now, and we're going to look at another technique that I use if you don't have enough ambient light, but you want to shoot with lights off. And that's been my thing. I like shooting with lights off. So here's that little trick. All right, so here we are in a dining room, and there's windows lighting up the back of the room, but nothing in the front. And you can see my camera settings here. I'm still 0.3, 0.7. If I start to bring the exposure up too much, it just starts to wash out the whole entire room. So that's not an option. So what I'm doing is I'm tipping my flash back, and I'm going to let it bounce off that back wall. That's going to eliminate like any shadows. So I'm not going to have to worry about that. But it's just going to light up the front of the room as if there was a window behind me close to me. So we're just going to pop off a flash here. And this is what that image looks like. So we're going to combine this ambient layer with the flash layer. I was going to do a flash pop over here, and then I went over to here, but I found out I don't really need it because I'm going to use the ambient layer to fix the ceiling shadow. Here is what I don't like. Let's start with our ambient layer. Remember, profile the standard. Shadows up if you need to. Let's get that exposure up. Kick those highlights down now because the table looks a little blown out. Let's just double check our flash image. Yes, we'll be able to repair this blown out table with the flash image. Let's make sure we're adjusted correctly here. I want to bring up the exposure here on the flash image. There we go. That looks really good. Just making sure we're keeping detail on that table. The sun was coming in, so we're battling that. All right, I like that. So let's double check everything here and command click on that flash image, edit in, open as layers in Photoshop. These will blend nicely, and I'm going to show you something that not always does the 50% opacity of the ambient layer work, because it brings in those flash shadows. So we're going to have to manually paint this one in. So ambient layer on top, click the mask, and then Command I to invert it. Make sure your brush is on white. Let's make this a little bit bigger. And we're going to bring in that ceiling, the ambient layer ceiling, and there was color cast. I'm going to show you how to remove this in just a minute. It is going to be with that same method. I don't want to really paint too much here because we kind of blew that out, and now we have that nice detail. Maybe just a couple clicks of the ambient, but I'm going to just watch the wall here. I think if we just get rid of that shadow, we're going to be good to go. I like the way that looks. I think we're going to leave it. Just a lot of that color is there. If we start painting in here, I think maybe, yeah, I guess we can add some ambient over here. Not too much though. All right, I'm good. I'm going to right click and flatten this. Okay, I'm going to duplicate the layer again. I'm going to come up here to filter, blur, and then average. And look at that. Look at how reddish that looks. That's supposed to be gray. So let's get our curves adjustment layer, middle eyedropper, click it. Look at the difference. Now let's shut that layer off. And let's toggle this on and off. It definitely cooled it down a little bit. See how it almost cooled it down too much? It got rid of the color cast. It really diminished that color cast on the ceiling. Look at that. Let's take the opacity down to about 50%. That looks better. Let's junk that first layer. Flatten image. Command S. Save it. Back into Lightroom. Here's our TIFF file. Back into Lightroom. I'm going to do my interior final bump. Right like that. Bring those blacks down a little bit more. Give it some contrast. Actually, let's reduce the contrast on this one. It already has plenty of contrast alone. I'm actually going to come... clarity for this one, I'm going to bring it down. Clarity sharpens the edges of things. And I'm going to take in the sharpness down because, man, that layer was really sharp. So, yeah. I like the way that looks. All right. Thank you very much for watching this tutorial. I hope you learned something today. Leave a comment below. Are you new to real estate photography? Are you doing Flambient? Are you trying to learn it? Is there a trick that you've mastered? Leave me a comment below and let me know what you think. Have a great day. Bye-bye.